Oh, it's been quite a while. Last time I left off, I don't quite remember what it is we were doing. All I know is that we haven't done gravity yet, and gravity can be a really big pain if you don't know what you're doing. For this episode, I'll be covering how to make sort of a universal gravity. Well, not universal, but it's a gravity where it takes in a generic, either a rigid body or some other controller, and then it handles it on a case-by-case basis, where essentially it says, okay, here's a list of functions, here's how this class will handle it, and then after that, it'll be, okay, the character controller, rigid body, maybe you have some other, like, transform that you're using and not like a character controller. It should be able to be applied mostly universally. For that, we're going to want to create I like organizing scripts, and this script doesn't necessarily belong to the player since it's more of a universal. What folder you're going to put this in, I don't necessarily know. You could probably put it into something else where it's let's say, for instance, maybe you have a script for like universal stuff or something along that lines, or maybe you have something else where it's let's say you have damn it, yeah, just anywhere that you think is there is fine for the most part, unless you put it in some folder called like minuscule. So for this, we're just going to name it let's see, gravity interface. I would say technically it's also generic, but it's not an abstract class. We're gonna have stuff to handle gravity, saying like, oh, which direction, like how hard does gravity pull, stuff similar to that. It's not gonna be actually no. Let's see, yeah, no. I wouldn't derive from mono behavior. I would just say, alright, here is a T. Unfortunately, since there isn't necessarily any there isn't necessarily any steadfast way of knowing, like, is this going to be part of a mono behavior? Is this, because what we're going to use it for, it's going to be part of the player controller. And the only thing driving from mono behavior for the player controller is the main body. Everything else derives from other interfaces, such as the input general. Yeah, that it derives from the input general. So since it derives from the input general, we can't necessarily say it's part of like a transform or mono behavior. Within this, we're gonna have not rigid body. Apparently this will be an abstract class. There we go. So with this, we're going to do a get, but then private set. The reason being is we don't want to necessarily change any one particular body. We just want to have the ability to get it, but we will be setting the body upon creation. Let's see. Public gravity interface. So with this, we can go in and say, okay, well, the body is T, and we're just going to say body equals body. This will allow us to get access to whatever body we're using, such as a character controller, such as modified rigid body, essentially any body that we need, which for this tutorial is what I plan on doing, and you can use it however you want. With this, we're gonna have a couple public functions. Abstract. I can't spell. Let's see. There's a landing function. I would say this could probably be a float, mainly because when you think of landing, typically you have some sort of, yeah. So you land and you create some sort of thing which does stuff. That's the easiest I can say. Let's see. Public, abstract, void jumping. Also, I forgot to capitalize landing. Oops. Even the IDE is yelling at me. Let's see, landing, public, abstract, void. So let's see, landing, jumping, and gravity, pull. Float, strength. So with gravity, you can jump, you can land, and you can be pulled down by gravity. Now, unless we want to be consistently being pulled down by gravity, we're also going to want to have a on-off switch for gravity. My throat. Such as, let's say for instance you land on the ground, but you don't want to keep going through the ground, which, depending on how strong your gravity is, will essentially say, oh, okay, we're just going to continue pulling it down without like resetting the gravity values or without doing anything particularly good. So I like to create an on-off switch. I also like to do a function where it says reset gravity, such as resets the values. For this, generally the reset is very universal. I do create it as a virtual class just in case, because maybe some things are like, oh, well, we don't necessarily want this as well, but let's say if you have a gun or like an item and it falls on the ground, that would then land, it would then reset, but now you need to lerp it because it's at an angle, so then you would have it touch the ground. And then when it finishes doing that angle thing, it would then complete. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with this. Which would be why you would do a reset. Because in that reset you would say, okay, well, it's landed, now we have to reset gravity, or we have to reset something. Virtual void gravity reset. We're not going to have anything in there just yet. Void gravity switch. State. There we go. Now, as you might have known, we're going to have a bool for the gravity state, and then we're also going to have a vector 3 for the strength, or for the direction rather. Actually no, that would be in the universal. Then we're I'm very sick today. Private float actually, protected float current strength. So the reason it's protected is because this class isn't going to be the class that does any of the maths or the modifiers to the current strength. It won't even be the one moving things. The one that will be moving things is the gravity class, along with the jumping, which will just say, okay, here's a vector 3, in which direction are we moving? The current, when it's being pulled down, this will be a multiplier to this, saying, alright, let's just get this. Or what we can do is we can just reference it directly, saying, alright, let's just do public class gravity mods. Let's do public static read only float gravity strength. Let's do 9.8 for now, because that's what gravity is currently, well, on Earth. Let's see. We can also say public static read only vector 3 direction. It is possible to change this during gameplay, such as Quantum or other games such as those where it involves gravity manipulation. However, most games have a universal thing of we're just going to have one direction. I think there was a game named Gravity where you controlled your character's gravity. But currently, it's not going to be changing, so we're going to have everything follow the same gravity. And it's much better to have it be predefined, because then we don't have to guess like, oh, was it vector or not vector 3? Was it like 2 in the down direction, or was it up 1 in the up direction? How was it created? It's generally easier on a bigger project to have variable names. Be like, okay, reference this static variable. It's not going to change. I don't have to worry about it changing. Just go this way. New vector 3. Let's do 0, -1, 0. So that will be pointing in the down direction. Let's see, for gravity reset, current strength equals, let's say, 1.0. For current strength, I wouldn't put it into the negatives or positives. I would just use it saying, okay, well, it's now times by the direction, and the direction is what we're relying on. Then for the, so, gravity switch, again, this one will be, well, we can either do a protected, well, yeah, we can do protected bool, grav switch, or state. Grav state can then be equals state. So now this is the basis of everything. With jumping, I would still leave gravity on. For pulling on gravity out, yeah. Let's see, gravity pull Alright, let's head over to the players thing. Interfaces, nope. But let's see. Oh, there we go, it compiled. Let's see. Player gravity. Alright, it's part of the iUpdatables. Let's just import that using interface. Implement those. Then, well, actually, we're going to do gravity interface, comma. Let's implement these. So, player controller using, oh boy, many things to put. So gravity pull, jumping, landing. Now, let's see. Let's just return current stream. Let's let's see if I remember how to do this. If I don't, I'll be right back. Alright, I found out that this is the way you do stuff. First, you need to essentially pass through what type of thing you're wanting to use. And then you say, okay, well, here's the name, here's two little dots, here's a controller that we're going to be using the name, which then references back to here, saying, okay, the base constructor, which this is what that's called. A constructor is something they use to initialize something upon creating it, such as where do I find it? I don't think one is here. Let's just do private player gravity grav equals new player gravity. This is what a constructor is. It requires information to be passed in upon being created. Actually, yeah, these are constructors. So that we're doing a constructor here. We're saying, okay, we're going to pass in this, the player controller. Then we're going to say, well, on update, we're going to do if what was it called? Input general had a thing. I think updatable. Did I update not have that? Oh, okay. Starts for each update. You could probably easily just have a thing in there, be like, okay, well, menu is paused. Jeez. Let's see. Let's say if grav state is true, then we're just going to do gravity pull. Now, in gravity pull, we're going to have internally, we're going to have a vector 3, a singular vector 3, because if you have multiple vector 3s, it's going to get so confusing, and it's just so much simpler to have a singular, like, oh, this is where things get confusing. Let's just do this for now. Or body dot move. transform player. So this is player controller, body. Do we have the character controller in here? Controller, control. Dot controller, dot move, or simple move. Current strength times by the vector here. Gravity mod dot direction. Now this alone won't actually do anything. Reason being, it's not being multiplied by anything. So we're going to go in here as well and say, okay, well, we want the current strength to have at least something. So depending on how you want your gravity to work, we'll change this as well. If you want your character to fall down in a linear state, you're not going to change this value at all. It's simply going to stay 9.8. The reason for that is, think of it as a equation where it's so the bottom is x, and x is time, and y is distance. Well, the equation we're going to be using for this is a linear equation saying 9.8 times time. Saying, okay, at 3 seconds we're going to be near 30 meters, at 4 seconds 40, so on and so forth. However, if you were to multiply or add 2 current strength, then you would be essentially saying, okay, well, current strength is now greater than, meaning we're going to be using exponents, and I would actually not recommend ever using times in this case scenario, simply because doing times or current, I'm trying to come up with the equation. I would say you do to the power of 2 if you were to add it, current strength onto itself, which would be counted as acceleration, but then if you multiply, it would be counted as a jerk, which is another thing in physics which is really weird and not necessary for this, but just don't multiply. So if you were to add, you would have a curve. If you were to multiply, you would have an even sharper curve. So for this, I'm just going to do a half of the current strength. Current strength plus equals gravity mod, gravity strength. Well, yeah, we could just say that. So now gravity strength, it will be counted as an acceleration, and so on and so forth. Now, when we do jumping, for jumping, we're essentially still going to be using this. Actually, hold on. I don't like gravity very much because it is very confusing. I would actually just say this. You're always going to be pulled down by gravity. But whether or not it's actually working is up to this. Saying, okay, well, we're always going to be moving down. And the jumping still uses this equation right here. This is why it's so confusing. So when you say, okay, jumping, well, the current strength equals, let's say, a negative grav mod dot gravity strength. You just want to push off against it. Well, there you go. Now you'll be using this, but in the opposite direction. Landing, that's used for more when you hit the ground. So let's say if body dot and it's been a while. Over. I think we have. Let's say we have the head. Do we have the feet? I don't think we have feet. Body. Nope. Dot. Controller dot. Maybe it's unvariable. Nope. Dot controller dot. I like to do a sphere cast for this, and landing in this, I'm making this way too complicated. Let's see, sphere cast, we need the origin, transform dot position for this. You need a radius, which would be the body dot transform dot. I'd probably also put this in the player variables. Let's see, float, walk speed, run speed, player width, player width, max distance, sphere casts, I hate them, but they're useful. Let's see, 0.6f, layer mass, I believe that was also, let's see, get variables dot ground, yeah. And I don't think we're using, or no, yeah. You can use a raycast hit as well, if you want, to get stuff such as like what type of textures are on the ground, what type of material, what type of anything essentially. Yeah, let's do, so radius, max distance. Alright. So it's going to be put right here, out. Hit ground cast. Make this private. And just do ground cast. Let's see, argument there may not be that. What? Let's do gravity mod dot direction. There we go. That's all done and over with. Let's do else return 0. Alright. Technically, we will always be checking to see if we hit the ground. which will be in here. However, what we're going to do is, let's see, current strength equals, let's say current strength equals 0, but we're also going to switch the gravities, but really only once, to false, because we don't want it to be controlling at all. There we go. If, actually, this is so confusing. There we go. I had it set up in a very interesting way before, but the interesting way sucked. Very bad. Let's see. Yeah, because the problem with this is technically we could never make it 0, because then it would always become 0. Yeah. Current strength return 0. Let's see. I would just go so far as to say, like, no. This is the wrong function. We can take this, but unfortunately, nothing else. In the update, we would say, alright, private void let's see. Landing if that. Alright. So when you're on the ground, it's false. This won't go through, won't do anything. If you're not on the ground, this is true, and it continually makes it true. You could probably make a lock saying, oh, well, gravity is just off altogether. With jumping, you would have that connected to a button input. Since it's public, you could just say, okay, well, this, and this. Let's see. Landing. With that, I'd probably ensure, yeah. So when you touch the ground, landing is then done here. Landing, there we go. Yep, okay. That is essentially all that needs to be done. Current strength equals 0. Yep. Unfortunately, yeah. So this can just be used saying like, okay, it's not the best way of handling things. I'm just gonna modify this so it's a void. I don't know, I'm tired, and oh dear, what? There we go. I'm very tired. I don't know what I'm doing. There we go. Landing. Done. There we go. So now you can play sounds, you can do what you want. Maybe you can injure the player right here. This you'll never have to modify again. You can just be like, okay, well, gravity's working. Times that, yep. Is the gravity state on? Well, yep, it's on. Did we land? Yes, we landed. And we'll continue to stay landed. Are we not? Nope, we're not. Okay. Just in case maybe someone does something weird to the variables and just changes that. Gravity strength, jump. Now, time for implementation. Gravity pull. Player controller. Oops. Let's do a public player gravity player grav get private set, because I don't want this to be modified out, but I still need access to it. So let's go over here and start, or not start, go over here and wake, and say, oh well, player grav equals new player grav, and throw in that. Then we can go over here to input handler. I think this is the right one. Actually, no, walking. Let's see, move forward, stand, crouch. You might also want to add a state to this saying in air. Simply because now your player can be crouched, standing, or in the air. And you might also want to have something different for that, because now there's no longer just these three. Case player state dot in air. Let's just do input generals 0 for crouch. Maybe you don't want the player to do, or like to move around in the air, so you're just not gonna have one. You can also come over here and say, oh well, the player technically isn't in the air. So, yeah. And on landing, you can say, oh well, it's very confusing. Let's see. Body dot get variables dot change state. Player state dot in air. Yep. And then there's, let's say on landing, you can say, oh well, the body dot get variables dot change state, player state dot standing, if you want to be on the ground. Or let's say your character falls down from massive heights, you can go into either standing or crouching, which is nice. So you can say, okay, well, the state went from standing to walking to whatever, and yeah, this is all, once you get an understanding of it, it is very nice, but after that, it is hard. Updatables.add player graph. We also don't want to forget the input handler. Or walking function? Nope, that's the functions. Where is it? Walking handler? Yes. Just do private void jumping main controller dot grav dot jump. If input or main controller input dot get key down, main controller dot get variables dot get key, keylist dot input. Walking head mouse. There we go. Jumping. Yep, now there's that. If that, then that. And I would say for the most part, this, or the player gravity itself, handles whether or not you can jump. If grav state actually, if grav state is false, because if it's true, that means we're falling, and if it's not, then we're not falling. All right, this has been quite lengthy, but this is also gravity, and sometimes even I get confused by gravity, most of the time, actually. So let's say you're walking, and then we're just going to fall off the edge. Woo. Pause it real quick. Player, get player. There we go. Unpause, and now we're on the ground. Interesting. Hold on. Let's see, we hit the ground, it's false, grab mode. Landing, jump, grab state, reverse. There might be a possibility that jumping isn't initiated solely because as soon as you do jump, it gets reversed by the landing, which is frustrating. Oh dear. For that, I would simply say, let's see. I'm just going to create a small lock right here that if it's not 0, or if it is less than 0 or 1, then this can happen. Else, don't. If jump time is less than 0, less than or equal to, then that can happen. So picky. Fix delta time. Actually, no, this is in the else statement. Yeah, there we go. Let's see. .3f times. this is essentially where it gets to the point of saying, oh, well, now I just modify variables to see what feels right. Yep. I don't think there's much more than, oh, wait, no, I mean, Yep, actually, that's also wrong. Because this needs to be updated with the additional key of space. Alright. It was move, not simple move. Apparently. Which is interesting. Yep. So we go back into Unity, we do launch. So it was the player's width, simple move, and geez. Yeah. Along with the what is it called? We need an additional one down here for space, player's width, and yep, those should be good. Then you can go back over here to this and just say, oh, well, I really don't like that. Let's just make it a 1. And then you come back in here and say, well, okay. Now it's a 1. Let's see how it affects gameplay. And you can say, oh, well, I'm still coming down quite fast. Maybe I could come over here and say, oh, instead of 0.3, it's 0.1. And the reason we did negative is because typically when you hit the ground, you're going to have a positive force. So that's how I like to remember it. So you're going up, and then you're immediately coming back down because this. So the less you make that, the slower your character will come back down. Yep. See? Simple as that. So, thank you all for watching. If you have any questions or comments, head over to the Discord, which I'll be posting down in the comment section. I'm there for quite a while. I can answer most questions. If you have anything else that you want to say, just like congratulations, you want to check out some of the games that me and my other friends have made on there, go right ahead. Yeah, I think this is actually the finished product of the controller. If I have any updates, I'll do an update video saying I found a better way to do it, I found a worse way to do it. Maybe there's been quite a few comments asking me a question. But for now, this is generally the way that things will be handled. Alright, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in my next tutorials. Bye.